you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Snap Bingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College, Dabigo Road. GMS Snap Bingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.
Hello and welcome to Second Take with IDK. Isma Dakava Chigongo and giving us the news behind the news. And my name is Mebo Kebirunji. Hello, Isma.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum.
I was about to say actually that these last days of Ramadan are said to be more blessed than others. So, and I like the way you're dressed, by the way. So what is the significance of these last days?
First, nothing significant about the way I'm dressed because I'm a regular with my kanzu. It's actually a very easy and simple outfit. But also in the last 10 days, there is a night that is called Laylatul Qadr. That is the night when the Quran was revealed to followers, to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, all those many years ago. So the Quran says it falls somewhere, either on the 21st, the 23rd, the 25th night, or the 27th night. So normally, Muslims are urged to stay up and pray and seek repentance and seek guidance on those nights. So that's why they are very, very, very significant. Ramadan in itself is very significant. I said that on the show.
Yes.
Sometimes I don't want to come here and be a preacher because if I mess up something, I don't know how I'll explain to those who preach to me. Yeah, the ones who are theologians in an Islamic sense. Yeah, the ones with a lot more knowledge than I do. Yeah, but very, very important period. And we are glad. Now, by the time you watch this show, you will have heard of the celebration of Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of the fasting period of Ramadan. So if you've been able to fast, Alhamdulillah, may God accept our prayers, may God accept our fasting and celebrate it wisely. The best Ramadan is the one you spend with your family.
And I know you've already made plans with your mom, with your family.
Yeah,
we are
with my
here
children,
waiting.
with
The team here is waiting for invites.
Yeah.
You'll find us at your door in Chengera.
At my mom's door in Chengera. Yeah, because that's my mom's home.
Okay. So CAF has been very busy, Isma. I don't know. Did you see this coming? This
No.
unreasonable decision. I think we're now a laughing stock.
Yeah, a decision that will make Africa get a beating on so many forums. I think when everyone comes to think of watching a game and it's completed on the pitch, then the result is overturned.
2 months later.
Yeah, 2 months later, or 60 days or 59 days to be exact, when the decision was made. It's quite embarrassing, but you also have to understand the reasoning. First, a game was played and completed in very controversial fashion in Rabat, and thereafter, Senegal, who won the game by 1-0, scored by Papa Gueye, who plays at Villarreal. The result was contested by Morocco. It went into a CAF disciplinary panel, which chose to uphold the result that Senegal had won the game on the pitch, and instead of fined players to the tune of about $1 million and officials who were involved in the ruckus that happened on that day, that is January 18th. Then thereafter, Morocco decided to appeal against the decision to a panel that is called independent.
Yes.
An independent panel that is largely composed of judges and lawyers drawn from a pool that is decided by CAF. So Morocco go there and win a case. But it's also very important to understand what laws were being followed. First of all, what CAF did is to apply the rule book.
Yes.
And the rules say that if you walk up, you forfeited the match. If you go and read the CAF rule book, you might have heard of Rule 82, 83, and 84. But largely it's 82 and 83 that are being cited for this particular case. Normally, teams are given an opportunity or 15 minutes in case they walk off to return and play. So if you follow the rules, the rule book, when Senegal walked off, they were actually off the pitch for 17 minutes.
Ah, okay.
So within the rules, if you follow the rules, then Senegal forfeited the match. However, one of the most important rules in sport is about the referee's decision being final.
Exactly.
That's why when you go to the stadium and you watch a game and the ref decides, you might be aggrieved by whatever decisions the referee has taken. But once the referee, Jean Ndala, who took charge of the game, decided after the 17 minutes to allow the Senegalese get back onto the pitch. Of course, Sadio Mane had stayed longer and had not gone off when Brahim
Had he
Diaz was
forgotten
out.
that rule, or was he not measuring the time, do you think?
Reports indicate that beneath what we see on television, officials that above him, the people in the CAF ExCom, who are definitely underneath that tunnel, that many people on television did not see what was happening, told him to give the game as good a chance as he could for the game to reach its logical conclusion. So in that sense, the ref, and of course the most important rule in sport is common sense, especially in football. The final rule is common sense. So when he decides to say that the game will be completed after Senegal had been off for 17 minutes,
yeah.
That implies that the result stands. So for whatever reason, I do not buy CAF reasoning the way they did. And it's very important that what they did is to choose the rule book, to follow the rule over the referee. Yet sport says the referee is final. So what they did is a bit like if you're a parent and you write down rules in a home and you tell your child that if I ever find you taking drugs, you'll never be my child again. And you choose that option, yet there is an option of rehab and rehabilitating this child, then I think you've gone on the extreme. So what CAF did was a bit extreme. It's going to bring a lot of ridicule. It's already brought a lot of shame to the continent.
I know.
And in the writing of Mark Gleason, who has covered the Africa Cup of Nations since 1992, the South African journalist, he wrote something that says that this for him feels like a hammer blow to African football because over the years, the Africa Cup of Nations has fought to find its place, its voice in among its global competitions. And we've had stories of clubs not signing players because they have to be away for a period during the season of a month for them to play at the AFCON. The world does not treat the AFCON with the importance that maybe Africans do, or they all want to treat it. Now we just handed them the gun loaded with bullets to shoot and maim and kill and assassinate the Africa Cup of Nations, or to assassinate African football entirely, because this is the most watched Africa Cup of Nations in the history. When you look at the numbers, 1 billion impressions on social media, anywhere over 160 million views on television. CAF was able to get subscription in territories where the AFCON was not being watched before, in Asia, in some parts of Europe, and in Latin America for the very first time. So you have a springboard to lift the AFCON even further. CAF is in a place where they are generating a lot of revenue. Currently, prize money has gone up. More players are willing to sacrifice so much to come and play in the AFCON. Then you go and you create a story about the AFCON that is not necessarily about the football that was played. I was in Morocco, and one of the things I was impressed about was the level of football on the pitch. And many of us were there. I could recite Joel Muyita, David Issa, Ismail Chionga, Darren Cherine, Nicholas Pamlanzich, all the journalists that we worked with, Clive Chaze, all the guys that we worked with at the AFCON, could all admit that the level of the game has gone up a notch. Yeah, the teams there were quite impressive, of course, with the exception of Uganda and Botswana, which I thought were the worst teams in the tournament. Thereafter, you want to build on that positive vibe around how good the AFCON was. Then you, the managers of the tournament, decide to go and almost murder it or send it to ICU by making a decision that is against all the basics and pillars of sports, of competitive sport, that when someone has won a game, then thereafter, Uganda overturned the result. But also, there's something that most of us in the media industry have had to encounter at press conferences of CAF and so many avenues, where many journalists have accused the CAF president, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, of being in bed with Morocco. And that has been caused largely by the number of tournaments that Morocco has hosted, especially with the Women's Africa Cup of Nations, and then with the Women's Champions League
this one,
and the age group competition.
Isn't this because someone pulled out? Was it Egypt that pulled out?
For this one, no,
Yes.
no, they won the rights to host this
Okay,
recent
there is
Africa.
one where a country pulled out. I remember like last 2 years or so, one African country pulled out and then Morocco stepped in.
They've not hosted an Africa Cup of Nations for a very long time. They've not hosted, I think, since 1988. And when they hosted, when they wanted to win, the final had Cameroon and Nigeria, and Cameroon won that final. They had actually beaten Morocco, should have been in the semi-final in 88. Then they went and requested or put in a bid to host the AFCON in 2015, which bid they won. Then thereafter, there was an outbreak of Ebola in West Africa that involved countries like Guinea that had I think Guinea was the epicenter for that Ebola outbreak. And then Morocco said Africa cannot come here because of Ebola at the time. So eventually, they were awarded to host this one as compensation for that tournament in 2015. So they badly wanted to win. One of the things I experienced while in Morocco is that the Moroccans badly wanted to win the tournament. And this marks 50 years since they last won the tournament, because they won in 1976 in that game against Guinea. That is also now being contested because the Guinea FA put out a statement which sounds very cheeky, because in that final in 76, the Moroccans did walk off and spent more than 15 minutes off the pitch before they were forced to return. And eventually the game was finished and Morocco won it. So if CAF has decided to make such a decision, then the people from Conakry think
they should also
make a decision on that. That's how bad a decision of reversing a result.
Could the game be replayed? In my innocence, that's what I think. Can the game be replayed?
That may be, all those are within the rules, but it's very difficult, I think, in a tournament where they aren't reserved days. They aren't reserved days during
It's just 2 months later. Just find a day. I know it's not easy to get people from Europe and,
the calendars are full, but that sounds very logical if you compare with the decision that has been taken.
Yes.
Because what is going to happen is that now the Senegalese are going to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is the highest court. And the ruling there will be final because there is no appeal after the Court of Arbitration for Sport. But while they do that, they vowed not to return the trophy. So regardless of what CAF say, the Senegalese are saying we are retaining our trophy. Then, one of the stories I saw last night, before I watched what Patrice Motsepe was saying, the CAF president, was a story of the government. And this is from State House, away from the Senegalese FA, saying they want CAF investigated for corruption.
Yes.
And now they've opened a Pandora's box. They've opened a can of worms that they would rather not have. But also remember that in the past few weeks, Morocco were also set to host the Women's Africa Cup of Nations. Then 12 days to the start of the tournament is extended until eventually happen in July. And we could all sense there's pressure around CAF and the events of that AFCON, where not only Senegal might feel aggrieved by the result of the final, but so will the Cameroonians, because we all remember that penalty that was not given to Brian Mbeumo when all of us in the replays sensed there was contact in the box. There is a penalty that was not given to the Tanzanians. Simon Musova also had contact that was inside the box and sufficient. Of course, the next question about contact is whether it's sufficient to take a player down. In most cases, it's sufficient. Then, of course, the Nigerians are very aggrieved by that semi-final result. Yeah. They think one of the Moroccan players should have been sent off for kicking the ball out after the whistle is gone, and you had already been booked in that phase. So there's so many things to deal with. And for me, sometimes the most important rule in life is common sense. No one would be blaming CAF in the outside of Morocco, the Moroccan FA, for retaining the result of January 18. Exactly. So when you overturn it, what then happens? Do you organize a trophy parade? Where do you award Morocco the trophy from?
Oh,
Do you
you
give
have
them
another
medals?
one. You give them a duplicate.
Do you give them a duplicate? Do you then ask the Senegalese to return the medals? Are people in the streets in Morocco going to hit the road and hoot the car horns
But
of
they
their
said
cars
people were
to celebrate?
celebrating. I had a few reports.
Does that even make sense? So sometimes that's why the most important rule is common sense. And I think in this case, CAF did not apply a lot of it. They did not need to order a replay.
I saw a statement.
They need to forfeit the result and hand the trophy to Morocco.
I saw a statement, I think it was attributed to Jamie Carragher, saying, he stands by what he was saying.
Yeah.
When all of us were like, who does he think he is,
Because when he brought up that statement, actually, for me, I always like context. That's why Second Take with IDK is here for that. He was being asked, someone was making a case for an African player to win the Ballon d'Or.
Mo Salah. I think it was Mo Salah.
This year, Mo Salah wasn't a contender.
No,
last year.
Yeah.
So when they were making a case for an African player to win the Ballon d'Or, and someone, I think in studio, one of the co-pan, say that Rio Ferdinand, one of them was a bit of black heritage, says that if this player goes ahead and wins the Africa Cup of Nations, then you can actually make a case that in addition to winning the Premier League and maybe the Champions League and competing in the Champions League and all the other European players, the things they are graded with, including winning the Euros or the World Cup, then you must make a case for an African player who has won the AFCON to become the best player in the world, to win the Ballon d'Or, to become world best player, as FIFA put it. Then Jamie Carragher responded and said, I don't think the AFCON is a serious tournament. Yeah? Now, we just handed him the gun, yeah, to call it a joke, to call it anything. Because the most important and cardinal role in sport, the things we tell people that sport teaches you, teamwork, time management, discipline, fair play, a result being final, the most important of those is that when a referee makes a decision, you might disagree with it, you might have all the kind of accusations, call the referee corrupt, call him a nuisance, call the referee anything. You do not overturn a result that we all see concluded within the four lines. Sports issues should be decided within the four lines and not in the four walls. And what CAF have decided is to go in the four walls. And they've just shot themselves in the foot. More than that, even.
We'll definitely be talking a lot about it, as the weeks progress. But let's talk about maybe a more serious tournament, UEFA and the road to Budapest 2026.
Have you looked at that stadium, the Puskás Arena, the one in Budapest, where the final is going to happen in Hungary?
No, I haven't seen it.
Brilliant. What a stadium. It actually has shades of the Bernabeu. Yeah, on the outside, it's a bit I looked at the stadium and I was like, wow. And while they were playing the round of 16 games this week, they also confirmed the tickets, that the cheapest ticket to watch a Champions League final will be 70 euros, which is the equivalent of 304,000 Uganda shillings. So when you see some guy who is seated at the top, because those are the cheapest tickets, they said right at the top of a stadium, then they will have paid over 300,000 shillings to be there at the Puskás Arena. This is a stadium that is also named by
Romania, yeah? Budapest.
No, Hungary. Hungary, which was also the host of the last World Athletics Championships. No. My colleagues Darren and Nicholas were there for that. But it's also named after one of the greatest players in Europe, Ferenc Puskás. He played for Real Madrid, but also played for that great Hungary side of, I think, post-Second World War of the 1950s. Scored goals in an avalanche. Never really was almost difficult to stop. And actually, I think he's one of a few players who's played for more than one country. Before these rules came in he's had the chance, I think, to switch allegiance from one country to the other. So that's where they find. And when you mentioned Budapest, I was just compelled to talk about the Puskás Arena because I was quite enthralled. Overall, the round of 16, the second legs
ended for Bodo.
Yeah, very disappointing. I think overall, first of all, a general picture. Very disappointing because normally what makes the Champions League and some of these competitions quite compelling to watch is that there's going to be a result that none of us expected, or there's going to be a turnaround that none of us could have predicted, or there is going to be a comeback or some kind of shock. And I was citing some examples that you go back in history and you find Manchester United versus PSG. You find Liverpool versus Barcelona. You'll find Deportivo La Coruña versus AC Milan. You'll find Porto versus Manchester United. You'll find all these results, Barcelona versus PSG, that normally are impossible. And the Champions League comes and offers you those, where teams overturn 3 goal deficits, 4 goal deficits for them to advance to the next stage. Or where a team that was never given a chance of going through do some magic and deliver the kind of result that no one expected. Now, this year, very, very disappointed that all the big sides that were expected to go through, all the teams that you look at the draw in the round of 16 and you're thinking, these are the favorites. I think all the favorites have gone through. That even the games that were supposed to be competitive were not competitive at all. Because you'd rather a situation where a Madrid-Man City game ends with a 1-goal margin.
Yeah.
Or a Chelsea-PSG game ends with a 1 or 2 goal margin. Now, in this case, all these were pestings. And let's start with the result that you cited. Bodo Glimt.
Yeah, with Sporting.
What a performance from Sporting. What a performance.
What happened in the first round leg? I was just,
I think
drawn back to it.
sometimes you choke. You choke. And fairy tales have limits. With the exception of that one biblical story. Yeah, with that biblical story, yeah. You know, when you watch these movies and then they sail off into the sunset, sport do not sail off into the sunset. That is only in the cinema, in the romantic fairy tale. But also, with the exception of that story of David killing Goliath with 1 stone put in Luganda, what's
sling.
The sling. I know it in Luganda. I was going to say Empuluruzo. That's what the thing that they swing and then you hit. That's the only case, I think, where life normally works that way. In many cases, that's why I'm one of those who does not believe in luck. You have to be very, very good before you get lucky. Now, I think overall, disappointment. But the fairy tale that was Bodo Glimt, I thought they choked on the day. The amount of pressure and noise inside that stadium in Lisbon lifted the team in green and white quite a bit. It gave them a 10% extra. And even if the first goal did not come very early, once they got it, it almost sounded inevitable that Bodo Glimt were not going anywhere.
Imagine.
3-0. It's not the biggest margin that has been overturned. Liverpool has turned a bigger one.
I know.
So has Barcelona, so has Deportivo La Coruña. So, and the ones I've mentioned are overturned bigger margins against better teams. So while we might be surprised by the manner in which Bodo Glimt choked, in the end, Sporting Lisbon played as well as we've ever seen them play.
So should Arsenal be scared?
So in the end, what was 3-0 ends up to be a 5-3 aggregate score because they scored 5 in that second leg. I'd actually would have loved a situation of Bodo Glimt against Arsenal, and here is why. Bodo Glimt are very unpredictable. Arsenal would not know how to deal with that. Even if I would still pick Arsenal to win the tie overall over the 2 legs, I would still imagine that they would pose a lot more of a challenge because of being nobodies in a situation no one expects them to be, than Sporting Lisbon, who we might all know a thing or two about. We can all reference someone we know with Sporting Lisbon, and that starts with Ronaldo, with Nani, with Amorim, with Victor Gyökeres. There's so many reference points about Sporting that Bodo would not have in a game against Arsenal, because if they today, I was looking at, for example, the team that Bodo put out. I think there was 1 non-Norwegian player of the 11 and the bench. And when you mention Norway, the first players all of us are going to mention are going to be Haaland and Odegaard. Yeah. After that, people will struggle to put together 5 to 8 Norwegian players who are going to start that game in the World Cup come June. So that unpredictability would have helped. But while you think about that, Arsenal had their own job to do against Leverkusen. And I thought they needed to be patient. I thought that's the one thing I could pick from the Arsenal game. They had to be patient, did not start very well. After Bayer Leverkusen, I think, managed the first half very well. The Emirates, all the 60,000 fans were quiet for a lengthy period. And then eventually, when you get that break, And you could also argue the goalkeeper had been very good before that. Eberechi Eze goal, which was for me the big break in the game. He had made some very good saves. In the end, when you get that break after being patient, then for me it was a procession thereafter. When Arsenal got the first goal, then they were destined to be in the quarterfinals. And we've argued many times on this show that we believe they're on the very easy side of a draw. And the bare minimum should be a semi-final. And actually, from watching the round of 16, as you go on, Arsenal should feel very confident of playing another Champions League final.
Okay. Newcastle, that margin. They started well, actually.
Yeah.
Did they also choke?
The Camp Nou can be a very intimidating place to play football. When you think about over 100,000 fans in there, even if these days they are less because of the renovations that have happened at the stadium, the teams that have been able to get results there are far much better than Newcastle has been in our lifetime. And in the first phase of the game, I was very pleased because I'd mentioned on Second Take with IDK that I think Anthony Elanga is going to be very, very important because of his decision making. And he has to get, because he has the pace to burn, and he's going to get behind that backline all day, the Barcelona backline all day. So all he needed to do for me is to make better decisions, and he does in the situations where he got behind that backline and scores the 2 goals. But thereafter, you always felt Barcelona still had 2-3 goals in them. You had to be excellent at defending the same way maybe peak Jose Mourinho teams would be for to knock out Barcelona in that state. And in the end, it was quite embarrassing.
Very embarrassing.
To concede 7
I know.
is a bit similar to when Barcelona maybe conceded 8 against Bayern Munich in that COVID Champions League game, that was played in Portugal. But Barcelona were very, very good for the result. And you could also argue Newcastle, when they started to fold, they eventually folded meekly and gave away some chances. The defending was not very good after Barcelona went up 3-2. And the rest of the goals were a bit academic. You could say in basketball, they call them garbage time points. There was a bit of garbage time goals in the end for Lewandowski, but the numbers do not matter because now Lewandowski, who is the 3rd highest scorer in the history of the Champions League, those 2 goals that he got against Newcastle moved him to 109 goals. That means that only Ronaldo and Messi have outscored him in this competition. And there's only 3 players who have got to 100 goals in the Champions League. So it's a very good number for a player who we all know is over the hill and is firmly in decline because he's done everything that he could do on a football pitch.
Okay. Now, does Igor Tudor get to live to die another day, as they say in James Bond?
He firmly does, because that victory against Atletico Madrid is perhaps their best performance. I thought they
3-2.
They played very well in that second leg, but we all knew they had already been knocked out because they lost 5-2 in the first leg. But if there's something positive that Tottenham can take to their fight against relegation, it's the performances they've got this week. They played very well for that 1-0 draw at Anfield against Liverpool. Then I thought they put in a very good performance against Atletico Madrid. They were never going to overturn a 3-0 deficit. But they need that kind of momentum because they are going to need it even more over the next few weeks or so, considering that they have what is the biggest game of their season this weekend when they play Nottingham Forest. If they do not win that, then all our relegation fears are back.
Yeah. Okay. And City, is this the end of Guardiola?
He actually says the team needs a bit of investment to get back to a competitive level, and I found that very wrong. Did you see the shirt he was wearing for that game against Madrid? It was quite curious. Didn't look as neat as Guardiola as we've known him. And remember, his wife or ex-wife, or she got back, whatever, is a fashion designer. So the shirt, which I would call the Chisati, was a very curious choice for me, the choice of the shirt. It starts to feel a bit like the end, to be honest.
Is he following your rule? Whatever goes up must come down at some point.
It's economics. There is Newton's first law of motion. That is one way to look at it. That when you throw something up, it comes down. That's gravity. But also, I think in economics, the law of diminishing marginal utility. and the law of diminishing marginal returns, but more the law of diminishing marginal returns for me. That when you invest in something and you put in something, it will go up, the yields will go up and then start to decline. That regardless of how much more you invest, it keeps going down. For me, this week and over the past fortnight, maybe it has started to feel like the end of Pep Guardiola's reign. The rebuilding job that he has undertaken at Man City does not seem like it's going anywhere. Yes, they brought in some very good young players, Tijani Riders, Ryan Cherki, Kusanov has a lot of potential, Mike O'Reilly. They look like they might, Savinho, Jeremy Doku, they look like they have rebuilt the side. But sometimes Pep Guardiola has been able to rebuild while winning. Now, what has happened this season is that, one, he's not going to win the league, and I don't think he's even been competitive. For me, he hasn't been competitive. Then got knocked out by Real Madrid with a 5-1 aggregate. How much more do City then need to invest in the squad for them to get back to a competitive level where Pep Guardiola can win titles? Because they've invested money in some players. I look at, for example, Nico Gonzalez, who was signed as an option to Rodri, and he barely gets a kick. And I could choose so many other players in the same mold. So there's a hierarchy at Man City, and Pep Guardiola feel like he still has the fire in his belly for him to take the next step to get City back to the next level. The signs currently are not very good. He does not look like a coach who is in a situation where he's having a bad phase, but he's going to figure it out. It actually reminds me of something he said in the aftermath of losing to Bayern Munich in his final spell at Barcelona, when he said that he walked into the dressing room and looked at all these great players, Messi, he mentions Messi and Iniesta mainly, and he said he did not see how he was going to motivate them anymore. And that's why he walked out of Barcelona. So he took a break and then joined Bayern Munich. Currently, it's very difficult for me to say that Guardiola, whose contract actually runs out at the end of next season, which is 2027, it's very difficult for me to say that he will be Manchester City manager, even at the start of July 1st.
Wow.
Yeah.
And indeed, it doesn't get any easier, as you have said. This weekend, we have the Carabao Cup final, where you have a mentee and a mentor.
Yeah.
You have an apprentice, if you would like, and a very experienced employer. And we're talking about Mikel Arteta versus Pep Guardiola. How do you think that will play out with all the pressure? They have just both come from Europe.
Yeah.
And now they're heading into this Carabao Cup. They're both, the top two in the English Premier League.
There's one favorite for this, Arsenal. I think the confidence that is flowing through their veins. And we've been very fortunate on this show to declare them champions after that result against Everton. Not because Man City cannot catch them in terms of the math, but the manner in which they got the result, and then the result that Man City got thereafter. You win the league on the weekends when you win, and the opposition does not. And that's what I see. But now the confidence that Arsenal have, City would need to go to the biggest shopping mall in the world to buy it. It feels a bit like one-way traffic now. Arsenal walk into a game when they are starting to sense that they cannot lose. Yeah? That they cannot lose. They're in that zone where nothing can go wrong. Yeah?
He's no longer the threat he was.
He was. The goals have dried up. The numbers are thinned ever since he got to the 20s in the earlier part of the season. It's looking very difficult. It's looking much more labored for Man City. And the fact that they do not even score many currently without Erling Haaland among the goals, you struggle to say something like this about a team as great as City and a manager as great as Pep Guardiola. But I want to say this. It will be close to a miracle if Man City are able to get a result and win the Carabao Cup. That's how bad they are looking currently. Because you imagine where the goal is going to come from. How many chances is Arsenal going to give up? Because they don't even give up many.
Let's talk about the midfield maybe a little bit with Rodri. Of course, Declan Rice still seems to be on form. But
Yeah.
do you see any gaps maybe on the Arsenal side?
Currently, Arsenal do not look like they have weaknesses. Yeah, even the one that we must have thought about, largely the centre forward position, which has been a bit problematic, and Bukayo Saka is not having a very good season. I think the midfield has been one of their biggest strengths. When you look at how good Declan Rice's engine has been this season in terms of chasing back when they need to win back possession, and the stability that Zubimendi has given them, it's been very good. And now Eberechi is playing with a lot more freedom ever since he started getting minutes again. Of course, the minutes, we must blame Tottenham for giving him that kind of confidence, getting in very good areas and scoring goals. You compare that with Man City, Rodri has had to work very hard to get back to the level where he was before that injury, and can be very difficult. I've seen players who suffer these knee injuries, as bad as Rodri's was, take a bit of time. Virgil van Dijk is probably the latest example of the high-profile players to suffer that kind of injury. It almost took him 1.5 to 2 years to get back to that competitive level, and Rodri has suffered for it. And when you imagine that he's playing next to someone who does not have a lot of physical ability in Bernardo Silva, the captain of the team, then you know that Arsenal have an edge because of the physicality they can bring in that area of the pitch. So you have to imagine that Pep Guardiola perhaps has to go with the conventional wisdom of retaining the players who have had the bulk of the minutes in the Carabao Cup, the Nico Gonzalez and all the guys who come off the bench. Or if it goes the same way, like he did at the Bernabeu, and you play Rodri and Nico Gonzalez and rather Bernardo Silva as the two midfielders, he's going to get battered. Because physically he would be knocked out.
Who should he put in goal?
That's always a big question, I think, for the Carabao, because for the competition, from when the Premier League teams join, especially the ones that are playing in Europe, they tend to play their second choice goalkeeper.
Yeah.
In Man City's case, it's James Trafford. And for Arsenal, it's been the crazy goalkeeper, the one who refused to Kepa Arrizabalaga. His name always confuses me, Cesar Azpilicueta, yeah? There's a similarity in syllables on the tongue. So do they then go, and it's for both sides, not only Pep Guardiola. Does Arteta, who coaches a team that has not won anything for 4 years and has won one title in 6 years, the FA Cup, does he retain Kepa Arrizabalaga, who has been in goal for the entire tournament, or does he then choose David Raya, who is now making a case of being one of the best goalkeepers, if not the best goalkeeper in the world, for a final that they must win? Or, on the other side, does Pep Guardiola, desperate to win something in a season that is going to fizzle out without much success because they are not going to win the league and they are out of Europe, so he has two chances to either win the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup, does he dare and drop Donnarumma and rotate and bring back James Trafford, who has been in goal? It's a very difficult decision for me, for the managers. Conventional wisdom for me would be have David Raya in goal because you haven't won anything in a very long time, if you ask no. If you're Pep Guardiola, have Donnarumma in goal, even if he hasn't been very good this past week, but have him in goal because you must win something for the season. But I sense one of them or both of them are going to stick to their guns and play their cup goalkeeper for the final.
Okay. Let's talk about the top four now. Bournemouth versus United. Is that more like a walkover? Is it?
No, it cannot be. It cannot be a walkover.
Conclusion?
No, it cannot. It cannot. For everything that United have done very well against under Michael Carrick, you do not expect to walk in the vitality and walk out with 3 points without competition, because Bournemouth, while this season they have not been as competitive, they are not fighting for Europe. They are fighting for Europe, but Conference or Europa. But before they will be pushing even much higher. It's been a very difficult transition season. They've lost so many players over the past few years, over the past 3 or 4 years. You think about Kakes, you think about Zambani, who is playing at PSG, and several others, Dean Huijsen, who is at Real Madrid, and all the others that have left Bournemouth. You think this has been one of their more difficult transition seasons, but you sense they'll show up for this one. And United are in, I think, for me, for a proper game. But luckily for them now, United have been playing one game every 13 days. This comes quicker than their previous games, so we cannot ask questions about them being rusty anymore.
No.
This comes 6 days after their previous game, so they should walk in there starting much better than they've started so many of their recent games, and that should make it a feast.
Okay.
Because Bournemouth will create chances, United will offer you opportunities at their goal, and in the end, it's about taking your chances. If United do that, then they get the 3 points and edge closer to finishing inside the top 4.
Okay, what about Villa? Villa should get the 3 points. They're at home against West Ham that is struggling.
West Ham is one of the form teams. Okay, they're struggling because they're still in the relegation melee. But in the end, they're one of the form teams in the league. Picked that result against Man City. The one that gave me a lot of flowers on TikTok and on YouTube Shorts. But that also implies that if there is that good content within 50 seconds, then there is even more within the 1 hour. West Ham, for them to pick a result at Villa wouldn't be, for me, far-fetched. Villa have gone off the boil. They've won one of their last 9 in the league. So that's not a very good sign for Unai Emery. Then you think about how good West Ham have been in recent weeks. If they defend as well as they did against City, or in some of their recent performances, and Nuno Espirito's sides are able of doing that, then West Ham could actually go there and pick a positive result at Villa Park. And that will further sink Villa and knock them out of the top 4 where they've been for most of the season. And they have a small matter of walking into that game having played in the Europa League. And West Ham will have rested for most of the week. So should be an intriguing clash. For me, it's not a walk in the park. It's not a cakewalk, a game I look at and I'm thinking, this is 3 points all over it for Aston Villa.
Everton host Chelsea.
What Chelsea will turn up? I don't even think Liam Rosenior knows what team is going to turn up. Because when you look at how poor they were against PSG in the week, to lose 8-2 on aggregate, we've never imagined this ever since Roman Abramovich acquired Chelsea back in 2003. And they've had some very good players over that period, over the past 23 years or so. So no one knows what kind of Chelsea will show up. But Everton have not been very good at home at that Hill Dickinson Stadium, their new home. And maybe that should give Chelsea some sort of positivity. And Chelsea is a team that has made me look very bad when I'm predicting, because they've picked results that they ordinarily should not, and then they've lost when they shouldn't. Because the other week I picked a result. I picked Aston Villa to beat them in the league, and then João Pedro makes a mockery of that. He goes and scores a hat-trick, and Chelsea win 4-1. So for me, it's a very intriguing clash. Yeah, a very intriguing clash. Because none of us knows how good Chelsea will be on the day. And for all that Everton are, they haven't been very good at home this season. And that makes it, for me, fairly balanced.
Would you say the same for Liverpool? They travel to Brighton. Do you know which Liverpool will show up? No
one knows, because they turned up for that game against Galatasaray.
The Anfield Magic.
The Anfield Magic came to the fore. Because they scored as many as 4 and could have scored more. It just started with the penalty that Mohamed Salah missed. But that is the Liverpool that we've been accustomed to on such nights. Will the same Liverpool show up at Brighton? Ancelotti cannot answer that. Neither can Liam Rosenior in the case of Chelsea. But for everything that Liverpool have not been, if you are going to finish in the top 4 or even in the top 5, if the 5th place team will get to the Champions League, they've got to string together some decent results. Maybe 3 or 4 victories. I think of the teams that are fighting for that 4th place, whoever gets there is going to have to stumble over the line, because they've all been terrible, especially Villa, Chelsea and Liverpool at this point in time. So Liverpool have got to go there and perhaps play at 75% of the performance they were able to conjure up against the Turkish side. And if they do that, maybe then they get the result. But it's a totally different Liverpool side I think we've seen for some of these. They've struggled against most of the sides, I think, in the bottom half of the league. I was looking at some of the numbers for example, they've lost to Wolves, they've lost to Nottingham Forest, they've drawn with Tottenham. And all the teams I'm talking about, they've drawn with Leeds twice in the league. All the teams I'm talking about are in the bottom 5. And Brighton have not been significant this season. Some of the numbers, for example, yesterday from a player like Kyle Mitoma have not come through.
Yeah.
Yakuba Mint has been on and off. Last week he scored a goal, and I had in commentary, that was his first goal since the turn of the year. And this is a forward, a winger, so he's supposed to be getting a lot more numbers. So Liverpool have an opportunity because Brighton have not been very good. And actually, this reminds me of one of our viewers who went to our YouTube channel and made a comment that I made a mistake on Hasler. I admit it. The second name is Fabian Hasler, not Robert. Yeah, and I saw that. Maybe I was a bit confused when you think about Germans. Germans are supposed to be with weird names. That's why I picked that. But thank you for watching. You know yourself, and I'm glad to correct that. But should be another interesting clash. Actually, when I look at all the teams fighting for the top 4, United, Villa, Chelsea, Liverpool, their games almost look, even in terms of difficulty, slightly outpick United because of the form they are in. Maybe theirs is the easier game than the other 3, but they look right around the same level in terms of how difficult they are this week.
Okay. So now, Isma, in this economy, to be a Ugandan footballer seems to be profitable if you're playing for Vipers. Club president Lawrence Mulindwa has promised what to his players?
300 million shillings. Last season, they won the league and the Uganda Cup, and he gave them 200 million. I've always referred to Lawrence Mulindwa as the biggest investor in a generation in Uganda sport. When you think about the number of people who have benefited from scholarship through his school, Chitende.
Yeah, and it was recently with the USC ACE results, Chitende was among the top.
Among the top that they've been for quite some time. But if you look at the amount of investment he's put in sport, especially with the stadium, St. Mary's Stadium, for a generation, Ugandan sport has not had an investor of the size of the level of Lawrence Mulindwa. But these are things that I think when he does them, like saying, I'm going to give players this kind of financial reward for winning, this I think it does innocuous. He doesn't even realize he has promised because he has done it over a long period of time. But I think every time he does it remains a story. So I sat down and I was looking at the numbers. I was thinking, okay, 300 million to the players and coaches. How many are there? I was doing a bit of math, divide by 45 maybe. How much does this one get? But this motivation, this is money you wouldn't have in your pocket. It's clearly higher than what they earn per month in terms of salary. So all they have to do is to go on and win the league. And they have 300 million in the bank. No other team is promising as much, even if I know for a fact that Bull are paying in excess of 10 million shillings in match-winning bonuses per match day. So a player could actually go home with anywhere close to 400,000 per match they win. And if they win many more of those, then you can do the math at the end of the season. In basketball, a victory is paid for as much as 130,000 shillings in what they call a locker room bonus. It's a very good thing that there's a lot more resources. But now this is an individual whose love for sport, he does not even know. I don't think Lawrence Mulindwa has a budget on what he spends on sport, because what we all corporate governance is for an organization, a club, an institution to drop a budget and say, this is how much I'm going to spend on this per season. I don't think Lawrence Mulindwa runs a budget when it comes to football or sport, because most of the things he does are on impulse. He would not have budgeted for 300 million back in September that when we win the league, I'll give you this. He wouldn't.
Okay, keeping it here local though, let's talk about the Uganda Cup. There are no shockers there.
Hardly. All the teams that we'd expect to go through, including Vipers, are through. They beat my Iganga United 4-0. Hilary Mukundana actually did score twice in that game. Then you saw Kitara also winning their game against Bunyaruguru by 6-0. That game was also played somewhere in Butema. Actually, I decided with these two because they meet on April 10th. And they're the top 2 teams in the league. So when they meet, it will be quite a cracker at St. Mary's Chitende. Then you imagine KCC also went through, knocked out on Duparaka, one-sided game. Who else? NEC also went through. also winning their game very easily. So you look around for the shockers in the Uganda Cup, and there haven't been many. And I said in the previous round, the round of 16, 9 of the 16 teams that played in the round of 16 were all top tier sides, Uganda Premier League sides. And now when you look at the quarterfinals, with the exception of that game between 6 o'clock of Bushenyi and Happy Boys of Kasanda, or Mutiana Mubende, in that greater Mubende area, all the other sides are Premier League sides. So you only have Happy Boys, like it's called, from Kasanda, that will be in the draw for the quarterfinals, and the rest of them are Premier League, Uganda Premier League sides. I don't know whether that is a very good side. Of course, as I'm saying this...
But even in the English Premier League, usually the top
teams come through. And as I'm saying this, Express still have to play their game in the Uganda Cup, and that will be on Friday, and another one of those. But you think in the end there is going, and Express are playing a lower tier side, but Happy Boys will be the lowest seeded side to make the quarterfinals.
Oh, good for them. Let's talk about the Enterprise Cup. We spoke briefly about it on Monday.
Yeah.
Any news you have for us? They play on the 21st.
Yeah, the 21st, that's Saturday. Make it to Wankulukuku. There's going to be games involving Pirates and Heathens. Very, very important. A competition between club sides in Uganda and in Kenya. Actually, when you go back, the competition in itself started back in 1924.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's just that a few years, for some of the years, Uganda do not play in it, but it happens with the Kenyan side. But I was also seeing, for the Ugandan sides that are traveling across the border to play in Nakuru, the games are in Nakuru, that's Cobs and Buffaloes, their games are going to be played earlier because the weather forecast in Nakuru is that it's going to be raining in the evening. So one of the games, I think, the Cobs game will start at 1 p.m. and then Buffaloes will play at 3 p.m., which is away from the earlier plan, which was 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. because the forecast shows that it's going to be heavy rain in Nakuru on the evening of Saturday, March 21st. Should be very interesting if that comes to pass. I like the weather forecast when you're watching cricket and Formula One on television. The Formula One commentator, David Croft, will tell you there is rain arriving in 15 minutes and it arrives in either 14 minutes or 16 minutes. Then they forecast in cricket and say it will be raining right after lunch. And the moment teams come out, then it starts raining. So if the Kenyans have become this good with the weather forecast, kudos to them. But should be very interesting. Wankuluku should be very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
the two teams that are playing, they're Heathens and Pirates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're grateful for the modern technology that is able to predict to the minute almost of when rain will fall. Now, for this part of why should we care about Neymar?
I want to
and
first
the World
open the
Cup?
now. So this past week, the Brazil coach, like most of the coaches, named their teams for the World Cup. Yeah?
Yes.
I'm curious, rather for the international break. Sorry, I didn't mean the World Cup. For the international break that is happening this March. Now, for many of the teams, it's highly unlikely that players who have not made these teams
will
make the World Cup because this is the last international break before we go to Mexico, Canada, and the USA. So, the Brazil team that was named does not have the name Neymar da Silva Santos Jr. If he's not part of this team, we are all thinking maybe Neymar will not get an opportunity at the World Cup. He's 34 now, but we are talking about the highest goal scorer in the history of Brazil for the national team because he has scored 79 goals from Brazil. That is more than Pele did score for this side. In addition, Neymar, who made his debut at 18, is the most capped player, second most capped player for this country outside of Cafu. Cafu is the only one who has played more games. So to imagine, even if Neymar has been in decline for some time with the injuries, with the accusations of the indiscipline off the pitch, it does not help to imagine that Neymar, one of the biggest stars, might walk away from football, and all of us keep saying, what a career this might have been. because the potential this kid had when he first broke through at Santos, which is 16 years ago, it was mind-boggling, because this is a player who does things during a match that others can only try out in training. So for his career to end the way it has, and he's not been selected for
But would
the
he
national.
add much value?
Sometimes it stars because it's a 48-team World Cup that will have a lot of games. I think there are games that he'll get Brazil through. Secondly, I do not think Brazil have the kind of excessive quality at the front that Neymar cannot make the team if he's fit. However, I also understand the kind of message Ancelotti is sending out, because I read a story this week that he went to watch him for one of the club games where he plays in Brazil, and Santos, I think, have been fighting relegation, and Neymar did not make the squad. And allegedly, that is a week when his sister normally has her birthday party, the one that makes Neymar miss games for him to attend and organize that birthday party.
Is the sister part of his
management? Yes.
Yeah.
Because Neymar is actually managed by his father and the sister. So it's very disappointing for me, because the career promised so much.
Yeah.
And what strikers do Brazil have at this point? And I'm not even justifying whether Neymar should be on the side, but I do not see a lot of quality from Brazil. They have some very good young players coming through. I think the kid at Bournemouth, Alan, the teenager who was only signed in January, is a good prospect. Of course, the biggest now would be Vinicius Jr. Of the forwards they have on that team. Would you carry him as a squad player as part of a 26? Does Neymar even feel comfortable in a setup where he's not the main man?
Yeah.
Because from a young age at 17, he's been the main man of everywhere he's gone. So for him to be part of a team, and maybe Ancelotti thinks is very good for team chemistry, if you carry a player who has not played enough to justify his place on the team, but you have to name him because he's a star, Ancelotti maybe thinks it's not worth it, and it's not worth the fight. Leave him out and take the rest to the World Cup.
Okay. So Isma, I should wish you a great weekend. I should wish you great Eid celebration, festivities with your family.
Please enjoy it. Please enjoy it, and must be with your family.
And if you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe to Second Take with IDK, Isma Dakawachigongo. Share, comment. We will continue reading your comments per episode, every time we come on air.
Yeah.
Otherwise, do take care of yourselves. And for those celebrating, have a great weekend.
Are you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Nabingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College Nabingo Road. GMS Nabingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.